When you first open the midterm exam unit module, you are going to see a page titled Read Me First. So welcome to the midterm exam unit module. What to expect? This is your typical 5-paragraph essay. You will submit this as a document just like you have done with essay 1. You will need to access the profit. I have actually added the PDF here in the module as it is available free online. This is due Wednesday, April 15th at 11:59. Remember that Monday is a holiday. Tasks. Number 1, read the next file, PowerPoint presentation. This file will end in PPTX. It is titled Midterm Exam English 103 PowerPoint. You will need to read the entire thing to make sense of the prompt, so please start there. 2, the exam has 2 prompt options. I suggest choosing the prompt you relate to the most, as this will make writing the essay easier, and you are allowed to use personal experience and reasoning as evidence. Read the midterm exam prompt and choose one of the prompt questions to respond to. When I say one of the prompt questions, what I mean is option 1 or option 2. So you will need to respond to all of the questions within each individual prompt. And lastly, number 4, write your essay in a Word document in MLA format and submit it to the assignment titled Midterm Exam by the due date, Wednesday, April 15th at 11:59 p.m. Welcome to the midterm exam unit. This is for English 103. I'm going to go through this PowerPoint with you just in case you wanted a little more background information and a little more explanation throughout the slides. How will the midterm exam work? Well, the midterm exam will be available in the module titled Midterm Exam Unit. Everything you need in order to complete the exam can be found in the module. It will be submitted as a document and uploaded like any other essay via Canvas. What am I writing about? Well, as mentioned in the announcements, this exam will be a preview to Unit 2, Diverse Experiences, Social Issues, and the Individual versus Group Experience. In order to complete the exam, you will first need some background information and context about The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. This is the book that you'll be using for Essay 2. No fear, you will not be reading the entire book just yet. You will only pick the poems that you find relevant to your prompt, if any. So you are not obligated to choose poems to discuss within your essay, but you will have to read a couple of them to get a better understanding of how the book is structured. Let's break this down into 4 sections. First, we're going to talk about who Kahlil Gibran even is. Next, we're going to talk about when The Prophet was published and why it matters. Next, we're going to talk about what the book is about, and I'm going to give you a very brief summary of Chapter 1, and then we're going to talk about some critiques and analyses of the book that will be present in the prompt. Who is Kahlil Gibran? Well, he was a Lebanese-American writer, poet, artist, and philosopher. He is the author of many books, including his most famous work, The Prophet, which is the one you'll be reading for this class. The Prophet is one of the best-selling books in the world and has been translated into more than 100 different languages. Gibran was known for using different themes in his work and using diverse literary forms. Just so you guys know, in The Prophet, he uses what we call prose poetry. Prose poetry is written in the way that we normally speak or write. It doesn't have rhythm, it's not written in verses, it's simply written in chapters. So in The Prophet, he uses prose poetry to address issues which all societies will encounter. This is what makes the book so relatable and why it has sold over 11 million copies in its American version alone. When was The Prophet published and why does it matter? Well, The Prophet was published in 1923. It addressed humanity during a time when Americans were facing a lot of issues: immigration, racial violence, and something called cultural consciousness, all while dealing with the aftermath and the effects of World War I. What is cultural consciousness? Cultural consciousness is becoming aware that your culture is different than others and developing knowledge about other cultures. The aftermath of war led to the destruction of the American dream because people were experiencing what we call malaise. Malaise is a general feeling of discomfort or uneasiness whose exact cause is difficult to identify. There was a lot of propaganda for recruitment for the military. There was a portrayal of war as a positive thing. There was a demonizing of other cultures and basically just being the other. Some women in the United States were experiencing new economic power, such as working and having the right to vote. Now, why does this combination of information matter? Well, Gibran is Lebanese. His Lebanese heritage also affected his writing because the Middle East, especially Syria and Lebanon, faced civil wars and Ottoman oppression at the time, up until 1920. So he had a lot of conflict within himself as to whether he was Lebanese, American, a combination of both. What is the book about? Well, The Prophet is a book of prose poetry divided into chapters. I'm actually going to list the chapters here for you just so you can see how relevant they are to the majority of people around the world. We have love, eating and drinking, work, joy and sorrow, freedom, reason and passion, friendship, pleasure, beauty, religion, and finally we have death. The first chapter is titled The Coming of the Ship, and this is where we get a little bit of context as to what the book is about, so I've summarized it here for you. So Almustafa is the main character of the book. He is what they call the prophet. He is in exile living in the city of Orphalese, which is far from his native land. So right away we learn that he's not from Orphalese. He has been waiting to return home for years, and he finally sees a ship approaching the isle, which excites him, but he feels a sadness in leaving a place that he has spent the last 12 years of his life. Almitra, she is a seeress, which is a woman who predicts events, is his first believer. She requests that he speak to the people of Orphalese. And she literally says, "Tell us all that has been shown you of that which is between birth and death." So here she is asking him to give his insight on everything that happens between birth and death, which generally for most people is a combination of these things. The reason some of these details matter is if we notice here, Almustafa, the main character, he is away from his homeland. So he is in the city of Orphalese, which is not his native land. And that's kind of similar to his real life in that he leaves behind what he knows and he comes to the United States. So oftentimes when we go places and we want to go back home, even when we get back home, we still yearn for the place we left. So you're kind of stuck in between this place of wanting to leave, but also wanting to stay. So this is relevant again, because it has a lot to do with immigration to the United States, people wanting to make a better life for themselves, but also missing the home that they had to leave to get here. What are some critiques and analyses of the book? The poems are said to address socio-political urgencies. A socio-political urgency is something that the people need at that exact time. So think of our own current situation right now in this pandemic. Think of the socio-political urgencies and the types of things that our citizens need right now. These urgencies were arising from mass migration and diasporic experiences. The land to which he hopes to return is often interpreted as an imagined space, a place to live that straddles the divide of diasporic experiences. Now, what does it mean to straddle the divide? Basically, what this means is he's kind of living in limbo. There's this imagined space that he wishes he could be in, right? But it doesn't really exist. When we move from one place to the other, we are in a new place. But we still yearn for that old place, but we don't live in that place. So we're on this divide between what we used to be, what we are, and what we will be. Additionally, they address modern malaise rooted in cruelty and violence. So I have the definition of diaspora down here. Basically what it means is a dispersion of any people from their original homeland. So when we talk about the diasporic experiences, we're talking about people who had to leave their original native home and come to a new place. Francois Krall refers to this place as the diasporic imaginary. It's a place that you wish you could be. It's a combination of where you left, so your native homeland, and the place you currently are in. So again, this happens to a lot of immigrants who are in a new place that they want to be in, not necessarily always, but they sometimes want to be in. But they also yearn for the place that they left, and they yearn for a place that doesn't exist. It's an imaginary place where they have the best of both worlds, but we know that that's not a real place. Almustafa preaches nothing new, but it is bestowed upon the Western world at a time when people were on the verge of losing their faith in humanity. This is what makes the book so relatable to different types of people. At the time in the Western world, they were experiencing a real loss in faith. It was post-war, people were struggling, racism was high as always. We had a lot of problems going on, and people were really unhappy. More on Francois Krall and cultural consciousness. It is precisely when a culture cannot be compared to others, when its singularity and difference asserts themselves more powerfully than the similarities within our own culture, that we are onto something, that we start to grasp cultural differences, not the essence, but the actual existence of cultural diversity. Why this matters. We often say that we are a melting pot of diversity, but instead of celebrating our differences, we often expect people to assimilate, to pretend that they are not different than the norm, to blend in. And then those same people are often accused of becoming what we call whitewashed or losing their culture. It seems to be a difficult place to float in. It's not enough for either side. Not the side you came from and not the side you're currently in. Let's talk about the midterm. The questions will be related to the following topics in some way: diaspora, immigration in our current political climate, the era in which the book was published, aka 1923, post-World War I, socio-political urgencies, as in what do we, the people, need right now? Are we experiencing modern malaise? Cultural diversity and cultural consciousness. Argumentative writing. The midterm will ask you to take a stance in some way based on the questions related to this PowerPoint. This will be an argumentative response paper. This means that you will not be using any outside sources other than the profit and the information you have here. If you want to add more sources, you are welcome to, but you do not have to whatsoever. Your thesis will have some fluidity to it. This means that I'm not looking for any specific structure, just some specific information. I know this scares you because you are used to a very specific structure, but I'm giving you lots of leeway here. The prompt questions should be answered within the thesis statement in some way, and each prompt question is going to have an example of what the thesis statement should look like. What should I do first, second, etc.? Well, first, you should have read the page titled Midterm Exam Unit, Read Me First, which lists your tasks for you. Next, you should be reading this PowerPoint in full. Next, you should read the prompt in full, which will be a document titled Midterm Exam Prompt English 103. Last, you should write the essay and submit the exam by the due date. What should my essay look like? Well, you should have an introduction paragraph that captures your audience. Introduce your topic by addressing the questions your chosen prompt asks you to answer, and you should have your quote-unquote argumentative thesis, as it is going to be very fluid. Body paragraphs. 3 body paragraphs. This is your typical 5-paragraph essay. Support your thesis by developing extensive answers to the questions from the prompt. Use quotes and evidence where necessary, and provide context. Your conclusion. Discuss your feelings towards the topic. Provide closure for your reader. Possibly offer advice, warnings, calls to action, etc. As always, don't forget to quote sandwich. Other than signaling the use of quotes, you should also follow it up with some type of interpretive comment. Guidelines. Read the prompt options and choose one prompt question to respond to. When I say prompt question, I mean prompt 1 or prompt 2. All of the questions within each prompt need to be answered. Respond by writing a 5-paragraph essay in MLA format. You will need to use at least 2 quotes from the profit or this PowerPoint. You do not need to provide a works cited page, but you do need to use in-text citations. This essay should be at least 2 pages typed and double-spaced using 12-point font, MLA, and your title should be Midterm Exam Prompt and then the prompt number that you chose. So this will either say prompt number 1 or prompt number 2. Here we see the English 103 midterm exam. The guidelines say, choose one of the prompt options from the 2 below and write an argumentative response essay. What is a response essay, you might ask? Well, this means that you will answer the questions within your chosen prompt and discuss them throughout the body paragraphs. The questions are listed for you to help you create content for your essay. Introduce your topic in the introduction paragraph by addressing the questions your chosen prompt asks you to answer. Your thesis statement. Again, this could be fluid. You will find examples within each prompt. This will be due Wednesday, April 15th at 11:59 p.m.